Hi, I'm Rebecca Dawson, and thanks for spending a few moments with me to reflect and think about, discuss and feel into this December 2018's monthly message from the Masters called Real Grace. So in essence, for me, this whole message that was just received this morning was really about learning to trust ourselves. We have so much in our spiritual learning and understanding that's about coming into acceptance with what's happening around us. And when we start to see turmoil happening in the world, turmoil happening in our personal lives and for our loved ones, our greatest challenge in that time is usually to move into what we call grace with it, which means moving into the trust of the experience. So for myself personally, that's usually when things are happening that are outside of what seems to be my control, or things that I wouldn't be choosing to happen either for myself or something else. To be saying, well, the universe is bringing this experience to me and I need to be in acceptance and grace with this. In other words, the grace is the agreement with the external experience. So the message about real grace this month from me was about the other side of that coin. Because when we're in grace with the eternal experience, quite often we're not in grace with our internal experience. And our internal experience is usually how we're feeling, but it's also how we're expressing. The internal space, again, how we're feeling, but remember it's the expression of that sometimes we really don't sit in grace with. Much easier for us as humans to move into our spiritual understanding with being in acceptance of the external situation, but how do we do that with our own sense of self? So for me, this month's message is particularly poignant because whenever there's change in your life, as there's change happening in my life and for many of you at this time, it's easy for us to stay in check all the time. How am I thinking? How am I feeling? And you also know that with all the turbulence that's happening at this time, it's so easy to feel into the collective field and begin to respond with that collective movement, that sometimes things are expressed in a certain way that we don't like, or that we start to feel a certain way that we don't like, or perhaps we say things in a certain way that later we don't like and we judge ourselves for. So for me, the message in this about having internal grace, or what the Masters are referring to as real grace, is actually going into acceptance and grace for what you're feeling and how it's expressed. Now, there are many that would approach this concept and say, well, when you're in a conscious mode, you're only expressing kindness and benevolence, and you're only expressing conscious and pure thoughts and feelings. And yet all of us who are having a human experience know that that always doesn't happen. It can happen in moments when we're really trying to be in editing mode and we're really trying to do what we think is the best thing to do. But the real moments of grace occur where we're willing to let that disruption rise out of us. We're willing to say and project consciousness in whichever form it takes. Sometimes our angry words and our intolerance and our impatience are the very things that create change, the very things that get things moving and new things created. We're very much wired within our belief system of duality to think that there are certain things that we can express that are acceptable and constructive, and certain things that are not. But when we really start to dive into the universality of consciousness, and if we really want to sit in the unified experience, the unified field of experience, we have to move into an understanding where consciousness is us in action. Consciousness is us expressing. So the invitation here this month is to not judge ourselves so harshly, to understand that any form of expression in any internal state of being or emotion or thought is an extension of consciousness. Can we really be unconscious? Or is everything that is expressed within this reality an extension point of Source itself? It's so easy for us to move into non-resistance with what's happening around us But how difficult do we find it to move into non-resistance with what's happening within us? We often see ourselves as a problem, and this is a condition that we come into as young children, as a problem to be solved. Let December be the time where we fully embrace and validate and be in grace with everything that arises within us. Let us not be in judgment of ourselves, just as we challenge ourselves not to be in judgment with our exterior reality. This is the point at which our internal grace and our external grace merge. This is the point of mastery. This is when everything that is expressed and felt internally becomes your reality. This is really what being conscious is. So for me, this was a very simple but profound message about where we're turning our attention, where we're turning our acceptance, and where we're turning our allowing for this month of December. It's very clear to me that we're being given the heads up about more change, more disruption, more turbulence in what's happening around us. And this is the time to really be very, very accepting of ourselves, very clear that everything that we are, every expression that we are, is pure consciousness in action. That's when the magic really happens. And that's when unity consciousness really starts to flood the planet. So if, like me, you're going through a really interesting time of disruption and change, take the time to be in grace with yourself, just as you are trying to be in grace with everything that's happening around you. So that's all for this month in my thoughts and reflections. A very simple, clear message for me, and hopefully a very simple and clear message for you too. Much love, and I'll see you next time.